Almost every Great Lake humanity has drained, we drain for keeps. Once the water's gone, it's gone. The Aral Sea is the one place fighting its way back from the dead, and even there, less than half of it made it. Most of it is now a poisoned desert you can drive across. The other part, the northern section, is rising, with fishing boats back on the water. Same sea, same catastrophe, two opposite endings. And what decides which ending you get isn't luck. It's a 12-kilometer dam and a river that 3 other countries get to turn off. This is the story of how Kazakhstan brought a dead sea back to life, and why keeping it alive may be even harder than the rescue was. I'm Bruce Pannier. I spent 4 decades covering the former Soviet Union. This is Turan Research Center, hosted by the Yorktown Institute, where we break down the geopolitics of Turkey, Iran, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. If you're new here and want more analysis like this, please like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's get into it. First, forget everything the word lake makes you picture. The Aral, the Caspian next door, the Black Sea beyond it, these aren't overgrown ponds. They're leftovers of an actual ocean. Around 160 million years ago, a vast sea called Paratethys stretched across what's now southern Russia and Central Asia, connected to the world's oceans. Then the continent shifted, the doors slammed shut, and most of that sea evaporated. What survived got stranded inland, giant pools of salt water with nowhere to drain. The Black Sea eventually found its way to the ocean. The Caspian and Aral never did. They've been sitting there, cut off, ever since. And because they're maroon pieces of a former ocean, they kept ocean life. The Caspian has its own species of seal, found nowhere else on Earth, descended from Arctic seals that swam in when the door was still open millions of years ago. A century back, there were over 1 million of these seals. Today, fewer than 10% remain. Think about that. Landlocked seals 1,000 miles from any ocean, marooned in the desert like passengers who missed the last boat out. So when one of these seas starts to vanish, you're not watching a pond dry up, you're watching a 60 million year old survivor die, and taking a lot of unique life down with it. In 1960, the Aral was the 4th largest lake on the planet, around 68,000 square kilometers, bigger than Ireland. You could lose a ship on it, and people did. There were ports, fishing fleets, a whole coastline economy. It was fed by 2 rivers, the Sur Darya from the north and the Amu Darya from the south.
Конечно, главной целью является создание большой и крупной хлопковой зоны в этой области.
Then, Soviet planners looked at the desert around it and decided it should grow cotton. Not a little cotton, an ocean of it. To pull that off, they siphoned enormous volumes out of both the rivers into irrigation canals. The rivers stopped reaching the sea, and a body of water that took an ice age to fill started disappearing inside a single human lifetime. You don't have to take my word for how fast. We watched it happen from orbit. NASA satellites, Terra and then Landsat series, have been photographing the same spot for decades. And if you stack those images into a time lapse, the sea just drains, year by year, like someone pulled a plug. By the late 1980s, the shoreline had retreated so far that former fishing towns sat stranded dozens of kilometers from any water, rusting ships marooned on bare sand. That eerie photo you've seen, maybe, of camels walking past the beach trawler in the middle of the desert? That's the Aral. That's the satellite record made real on the ground. By 1989, the sea had split into 2. Small Aral in the north and Great Aral in the south. And here their paths fork, because in the mid-1980s, the southern river gave out completely, and the Great Aral, cut off from its water, was finished. Today, most of it is salt desert. No one's bringing that half back. So hold on to the northern half. That's the one this story is about. And here's the part that should worry everyone from Tehran to Astana. The Aral isn't a one-off. It's just the first in line. Look at Lake Urmia in northern Iran. In 1995, it was nearly 6,000 square kilometers. 20 years later, same story. Dams and farms upstream, it had lost about 90% of its area. The Aral's whole tragedy fast-forwarded and replayed next door. And then there's the big one, the Caspian, the largest inland body of water on Earth, home to those seals, has dropped nearly 2 meters since the mid-1990s, losing a patch of water about the size of Sicily.
Bura dno olup, başa düşürsən, deməli ayaq üstə duranda, dnon üstündə duranda qardaş, əllərini qaldırırsan yuxarı.
Mostly off its shallow northern shelf. Scientists pin only about 40% of that on climate. The rest is what humans do to the rivers, feeding it. Projections run from several more meters of a decline to well over 10 by the end of the century. Put all three on one chart and the pattern jumps out. Same diseases every time. A dry basin, rivers carved up for farms and power, evaporation quietly winning. The Aral just reached the end stage first, which is exactly why what Kazakhstan is trying in the north matters way beyond one shoreline. It's the only place in the region bending the line back up instead of watching it fall. Before we get into the rescue, you need to see the bill, because the Dead Sea doesn't just sit there quietly.
По оценкам аналитиков, к 2050 году засухи в Центральной Азии могут нанести ущерб в размере 1,3% от валового внутреннего продукта в год, что приведет к появлению около 5 миллионов внутренних климатических мигрантов. Мы также сталкиваемся с проблемами неэффективного использования воды и игнорирования экологических последствий. Крайне высока степень зарегулированности стока двух основных рек нашего региона – Сырдарьи и Амурдарьи.
When the Aral Sea dried, it didn't leave sand, it left salt, an estimated 100+ billion tons of it on the exposed seabed, marinated in decades of pesticide and fertilizer runoff from those cotton fields. And every year, the wind lifts tens of millions of tons of that toxic dust and flings it across Central Asia. Not metaphorically across the region, they've traced the salt onto glaciers in the Himalayas. Dust storms off the old seabed routinely reach cities from Dushanbe to Tehran. The people who breathe the worst of it live right on the shore, in Uzbekistan's Karakalpakstan. And the health data there is genuinely hard to read. Infant mortality in the worst districts has run around 100 per 1,000 births, roughly double the national rate and more than 10 times what a baby faces in Canada. Anemia turns up in nearly every pregnant woman surveyed. Since the 1960s, chronic bronchitis in the region rose 30-fold. Asthma runs several times the national average. Researchers blame the salt and chemical dust for a large share of the childhood respiratory diseases. A quiet, honest caveat, because we don't want to overclaim on this channel. A lot of these figures come from surveys in the 1990s and 2000s, and dust is one cause tangled up with poverty and collapsed Soviet healthcare. But the direction isn't in dispute. Drain the sea, and you don't just lose the fish, you poison the air for everyone downwind for generations. That's the stake. Now the rescue. Before all this, the Aral was a working sea. Mid-century, its fisheries pulled in tens of thousands of tons of fish a year and employed around 60,000 people. Aralsk, on the Kazakh shore, was once a proper fishing town. Canneries, boats, the works. Then the chemistry turned on them. As the water dropped, the salt didn't leave. It just concentrated into what remained, like a pot boiling down. Salinity in the north climbed from about 10 grams per liter to nearly 30. Most fish can't survive past 18. One by one, the species blinked out. By the mid-1990s, commercial fishing had all but stopped. Catches fell from tens of thousands of tons to a few dozen, 1,000 to 1 collapse. By then, the only fish tough enough to survive was a salt-loving flounder the Soviets had shipped from the Sea of Azov, one imported flatfish holding the line for an entire town's hopes. Here's the pivot the whole story turns on. The Northern Aral could be saved for one blunt physical reason. Hold the river's water in the North Basin, and more flows in than evaporates out. The level rises, that's it. That one fact is the foundation under everything Kazakhstan has done since. and the way you hold the water is almost crude. You dam the channel between the north and the dying south. You stop the good half from bleeding into the dead half.
Главным символом Возрождения стала Кукуральская плотина.
The first attempt in 1992 was basically a wall of sand and reeds. It failed, got patched, failed again, until a surge in 1999 blew it out entirely, and the catch cratered to 52 tons. The real fix came in 2005, the Kokoral Dam, 12 kilometers of proper engineering bankrolled by the World Bank. And it worked, not in theory, in the satellite images again. Within 5 years, the sea rose about 4 meters. The shoreline marched back toward Aralsk from 75 kilometers away to 35. Salinity fell back under 10 grams per liter, right where it used to be, and the fish came home.
Теперь, когда вода пришла, рыбы стало больше. Мы рады. Рыбаки ловят рыбу и обеспечивают себя.
As the water freshened, in came zander, bream, carp, catfish, perch, pike. Between 2015 and 2023, the catch averaged around 7,000 tons a year, much of it now exported to Russia and Europe. A sea pronounced dead, back on restaurant menus a continent away. And Kazakhstan isn't stopping at holding the line. Over the past 3 years, coordinated water releases pushed more than 5 billion cubic meters into the Northern Sea, a record 2.6 billion in 2024 alone. Its volume is up roughly 42%, salinity down nearly fourfold, and it hit the level the government's own plan didn't expect until the end of the decade. Now comes phase 2. Again, with World Bank backing, Astana plans to raise the Kokoral Dam by 2 meters and build a new structure to stabilize nearby lakes, aiming to grow the sea's volume from 23 to 34 cubic kilometers. The Prime Minister has ordered financing locked in by the end of 2026. Refilling would take 4 to 5 years. And on that poisoned southern seabed, there's a second front. They're trying to nail the dust down with trees. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan have planted saxawal and other hardy shrubs across tens of thousands of square kilometers, green belts now covering more than half the dried bed. But keep the skepticism handy. Planting isn't the same as surviving. Kazakh authorities put saxawal survival at around 30%. It's far too early to call that one a win. Which brings us to the fight that actually decides all of this. And it isn't fought with dams or trees, it's fought at negotiation tables.
Казахская пословица гласит: «Су рыстың көзі». Вода – источник благополучия. Считаю, что наши государства при формировании водной политики должны исходить из того, что вода – это ограниченный природный ресурс, от которого напрямую зависит благополучие и устойчивое развитие всего региона.
The Northern Aral Sea lives or dies on how much of the Sirdarya reaches it. And Kazakhstan sits at the bottom of that river. Everyone else drinks first. The flow is controlled upstream by Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and above all by Uzbekistan, which uses the lion's share. Those record inflows only happened because the whole basin coordinated its reservoirs and stuck to the sharing deals. Last year, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan signed an agreement to jointly manage their shared water, and that piece of paper is now the ground the entire recovery stands on. But that ground is shifting. The Sirdarya's flow has dropped sharply since 2019, and Kazakh scientists expect it to fall further by 2030. Upstream, Kyrgyzstan wants to build the Kambar-Atal 1 hydropower dam on the river's biggest tributary, behind a reservoir big enough to squeeze what reaches the sea even harder. And there's a warning light already blinking. The water ministry reports catches near 8,000 tons a year. Fishermen on the shore describe something closer to 4,000, and water turning salty again. When the official spreadsheet and the guy pulling in the nets start telling different stories, bet on the guy with the nets. He feels it first. None of this makes the upstream countries villains. They've got their own farms, their own power grids, their own perfectly legitimate thirst for the same river. They're middle powers with real interests, not pieces on someone's chessboard. And that's exactly what makes this hard. It isn't Kazakhstan versus a problem. It's 4 countries splitting a shrinking river, and Kazakhstan is standing at the end of the line. So here's the real lesson of the Northern Aral. It isn't the sea was saved, it's that saving it was the easy part, and Kazakhstan already proved it can out-engineer this disaster. What no one has proven yet is that 4 capitals can keep agreeing on water long enough to keep it saved. A dam you build once, a water sharing deal you have to win again every single year. The first rescue bought time. Whether the region spends that time wisely won't be decided at the dam, it will be decided upstream on the river. Thanks for watching. This video is based on analysis by Vadim Ni for Turan Research Center. I'll leave links in the description if you want to read the full piece. If you found this video informative, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. And let me know in the comments, who do you think actually decides the Aral's future? The engineers in Astana or the countries upstream who control the tap?